There is Eddie George, 129th consecutive start at running back. That's second all time. Dan Campbell went in motion. Eddie George straight ahead across the 40. We welcome those of you who've been watching the St. Louis Rams and the Arizona Cardinals to the Metrodome in Minneapolis.
First down, then a big gainer by Eddie George.
On 2nd and 4, it's Eddie George again. Nice little cut at the line of scrimmage, and he's got a first down. Brian in the backfield on 2nd and 10. It's Eddie George. Got a block from Darian Barnes. Fights his way close to the 40-yard line. Picked him about 5. Dontarius Thomas made the stop. Up wide. Eddie George. Good hold, good power. Stopped around the 26-yard line. Picked up close to 5. This year,
Jim Nance with Phil Simms and Bonnie Bernstein. Cowboys in Cleveland. Early action. Cowboys pick up the first down on their first play of the game, and they've now picked up a second and a third as Eddie George runs out to the 46-yard line. This series began back at the 10-yard line.
Well, this is the Cleveland Browns defense. This week you got to be worried about Vinny Testaverde throwing the football down the field, so you can't crowd the line of scrimmage, be so aggressive like they were last week against the Baltimore Ravens.
Parcells the way you do.
Can't be afraid of losing.
A screen pass. Eddie George down to the 26. 3rd and about 5 coming up for Dallas. Eddie George, short gain, maybe 5. And again, Bonnie Bernstein is roaming the sidelines for us. And what do you hear there at halftime, Bonnie?
With a left foot sprain.
All right, Bonnie, 2nd down and 5 here for the Cowboys. And Eddie George with a good run there. Showing some speed for 6. Al Johnson, I mentioned at the start, this was for the center out of Wisconsin, his first career start. And he helped clear the way to move the chains. There's Al Johnson.
Line, Larry Allen, Flozell Adams, they are big. Jim, nice call. Al Johnson pulling around, getting a good block, but
2nd and goal, Dallas. Eddie George. He's across. Touchdown, Dallas. Eddie George with his first touchdown in his last 166 rushing attempts. It's been a while. So 1st and 5 for Dallas. Full backfield, and Eddie George, tell you today, at times he's had a little bit more of a push than we've seen during the preseason and game 1, and that's a run for 8 yards for Eddie.
yeah, good block.
And very poor numbers today, under 30% and 2 interceptions. Eddie George bursting up the middle, and Keyshawn trying to help move that pile. It gains about 9. Tucker also with a good block.
How many times to go out there and make another stand for you? The Cleveland Brown defense, they've been courageous today. They've been under assault all day long by the running and throwing of the Dallas Cowboys.
Game, and that is wrong.
40-yard penalty on 3rd and 7. They give it to Eddie George, and George gets in. Broke the plane. Touchdown. What appears to us to be a fairly bogus pass interference call, and winds up with an Eddie George touchdown.
And that's where you're going to run. When you get down to the goal line, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you want to get in behind Larry Allen and Flozell Adams.
And ball at the 28-yard line. Eddie George back in the lineup. Funny how they're using him. I mean, he was the workhorse for so many years for Jeff Fisher, John, and now he looks like he'll be a
Cowboy offense is figuring something out that the Giants are doing on first down.
Anderson completing his first pass last week for a touchdown against Washington, and here's George going off the weak side. Eddie George down the sideline is pushed out of bounds, and now getting into a scuffle with Jabril Wilson.
The football. Darian Barnes, number 36, the new fullback there. He comes around the corner, gets a great block, right there on the linebacker, and Keyshawn Johnson working on the outside. That's where your big plays come in the running game, when you've got wide receivers that are willing to block downfield. And you can question a lot of things about Keyshawn Johnson, but you can't question his effort downfield as a blocker.
He can beat you that way, and very valuable performer. As the Cowboys are going to miss Dan Campbell, the former Giant, who's out with a sprained foot on injured reserve, and the terrific blocker that he is. So on first down, here's Eddie George, gets tripped up, and had he not, he might have gone into the end zone. Brent Alexander got a hand on George, who picks up 8 yards. So this is a different Eddie George we're seeing in this first quarter than the Cowboys have witnessed this year.
Well, the Cowboys are doing a good job now of running right into the blitz. On that play right there, they had a blitz coming. The play was designed. It went a great block. The fullback coming in motion. Here he goes, right into Barrett Green right there. The safety's late getting down. The Giant defense. When Richie Anderson is in there, it's so versatile. They can do so many different things. We'd like to see Eddie George.
Well, Eddie George, Cowboys like to see him as well, as he gets the first down to the 21-yard line. Allen and Green making the tackle today for the Cowboys. They have a first down on their 38, and they go on the ground to George. Eddie George picking up 9 yards.
You know, Darrell, everybody
40-yard line. Testaverde on the brink of his 41st birthday, and Eddie George slices for the first down to the 31.
Has been asked to do some of this. That's him in motion, number 82. This is not an easy block. Going in motion, coming back, having the ability to read your guys through. He does a great job of getting over.
All right, Bonnie. Well, Vinny has stepped it up 6 out of 7 to start the game. And here's Eddie George on 2nd and 1. Eddie George, the tailback, lined up out of the eye, and they go with Eddie. And running hard for 8 yards behind Darian Barnes. And 3. Looked like they might go outside with Glenn, instead up the middle for Eddie George's first down. Commissioner
Testaverde, who turns 41 next month, and will throw on first down, getting some pressure, and he finds Eddie George out of the backfield, and George may have enough for the first down, with Niall Diggs making the tackle. The Packers with from the 30-yard line, first down, 2 tight end formation, and Eddie George running up the middle and getting good yardage on first down, picking up about 7 yards with Ahmad Game undefeated. First down from the 41, and Eddie George back in, going off the left tackle, slicing his way for about 7 yards before the strong safety Mark Roman. Packers in front of the Cowboys, and Eddie George diving toward midfield. Dick Stockton along with Troy Aikman, Chris Collinsworth, and Pam Oliver. Not much of a running game today, and can't just blame the big score. The Cowboys were not effective running the ball. They are on this play as Eddie George rumbles for the first down to the 5, picking up 12. And for the game break, here's JB. All right, JB, and of course the Seahawks trying to regain the NFC West lead with the Rams losing today in a big upset to Miami. It'll be first and goal at the 5-yard line, and Eddie George gets the touchdown. 5-yard touchdown run for Eddie George, and every time Dallas has made a little bit
of unusual to see the Cowboys running the ball, doesn't it? I mean, it's just been pass all day long, and when you actually see them just run back-to-back running plays and get something going, you start to think, well, maybe that, but.
Third down and 1. Eddie George picks up the first out across the 30-yard line.
And this is the style that Bill Parcells wants to play. He opened with a pass, but
as he gets the ball more and more.
From the 30, play action. Testaverde with time, complete to George. And he's knocked out of bounds after a gain of 7 by Fred.
You want to give your chest up to that guy. He's got 2 cannons of arms, and if them hands hit you in the chest, you're going to feel it. It's going to knock the wind out of you.
Eddie George inside the 15. Down to the 13-yard line.
Good pronunciation, JB.
Where you going?
Excellent job. Eddie George still on his feet. Finally forced out of bounds at the 48-yard line, 21 yards.
Up into the defense and then allow him to break to the outside. He gets into the seams right there. Brock Marion comes up, doesn't have a good angle. Then Eddie George gets to the outside. That is totally different than trying to initiate the play on the perimeter. Eddie is at his strength between the tackles, being downhill, and then if he sees it to the outside, the ability to get outside and add more yards.
Looks like Mariucci do not want any part of making the tackle. Testaverde dumping it off to Eddie George. And George close to another first down. Down at the line.
Runs into 12, 13, 14-yard runs.
I guess you were a better blocker in the fourth quarter. Eddie George again inside the 35.
Passing game, it helps Bill Parcells stay in that philosophy of taking time off the clock, keeping the defense off the field, and not being a high-risk passing attack.
Eddie George into Lions territory. In fact, the only catch made by a Cowboys wide receiver today was
from the 31. The pitch to George with the fullback Darian Barnes leading the way. And George gains 5 before he was tackled by Brian.
At some point, though, you wonder when Henson, if Dallas does fall completely out of contention, get that look. Eddie George stays on his feet, gets it to the 41-yard line, 3-yard shot. 2 from the 23-yard line. Eddie George now, and he's going to pick up the first down as he takes the ball to the 20-yard line. George, room inside the 10, and Eddie George powers his way into the end zone.
Well, Jerry Jones said that's what we needed, me down there in the sideline and that full house backfield. This is what they come out with in the second half, and they run and they pass. This is a lead draw to the left, good lead block. Eddie George just runs off that block, and then he's going to run right over Brian Dawkins.
Well, it was
used to use paper bag. With 5:02 left, Eddie George gets his first carry of the day, and a penalty flag comes flying in from behind the play.
They closed the doors after week 17. Richie Anderson picked up 9 yards on the play, and the handoff to Eddie George, and George will get the first down as the Cowboys driving to the Redskin 30-yard line, a 6-yard gain.